Welcome in, folks, to another episode of What's Bruin. Dom, how was the weekend with the grandson?
Oh, tiring, man. Just thank goodness it was only one of them and not both of them. But I have to say, after watching our intro video, that we're gonna have to make a new one now because half the
I
guys are gone.
I was thinking the same thing. Um, People got what they wanted. Sweeney blew it up. He went nuclear
Ye-
on this.
Yeah. Let me start by saying this. You have to give him credit because he picked a direction, he stuck by it, and he executed with no false hope of making the playoffs. Um, the assets that he brought in uh, far outweigh what Brandon Carlo or Trent Frederick or Justin Brazeau or Charlie Coyle would have brought to this team next season. So it's he realized this is a seller's market and better to act now and get what he did than wait a year and lessen the return.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to dive into him here, but yeah, as Jason says here, they can't say Sweeney has no balls now. He pulled the trigger on a couple deals that I didn't think he would have the gumption to do. At least not yet, anyway. But to your point, he picked a direction and he is all in on it. Regardless of how you feel. What's that?
Focused on it.
Yeah, he's focused on it. And regardless of what you think of hhim as a GM, he nailed most of these trades.
Yeah.
As far as getting assets that this team needs in return.
And I can, with Allmark to Ottawa, Carlo to Toronto, and Marchand to Florida, you can lay to rest the notion that you don't trade within your division.
Yeah, so far the Allmark one hasn't come back to bite you. Yeah, get the best deals possible. So we are going to dive into these deals, but I mean, clearly Don Sweeney knew what he was going to do going into the deadline. It's from what I've been told, he had a few other irons that were in the fire that obviously this is what came to fruition. This is what we're left with. So we'll never know for sure all the details on deals that may or may not have happened. It just, I know a lot of things changed as soon as Mikko Rantanen decided he was going to sign in an extension with Dallas, or he was open to it. So that held up a lot of things. Mm-hmm. Could we have seen Marchand go to other teams that were out there? Colorado was mentioned, Vegas was mentioned, Dallas was mentioned, LA was mentioned, Edmonton was mentioned. Sure. But that's what happens when you're dealing with 31 other teams. Things dominoes fall.
He wasn't going out west.
That's the thing is he also had some control. So there was,
well, it's not that he had control. He only had control over 8 teams. They did the honorable thing, asked him where he wanted to go, and he picked it. We'll get into Marchand later.
Yeah. Let's see. Matrix saying I'd have to give Don Sweeney trade deadline as an A-. If you're looking at it from a grand scheme, like from a zoomed out perspective, would you agree with that?
No.
Okay.
I give him an A+. He did better than anybody could have expected to in any one of those trades.
I think so. I think he nailed every single one, regardless of the team that it was with. Emotions out of it. No, am I thrilled that Marchand's going to Florida? No, I wanted him to retire a Bruin. But if you take the emotions out of it,
but that's not. It's not the fact that it's Florida. The fact that people are down on it is because of the return. Yep. But I'll tell you what, you can't have it both ways. You cannot credit Sweeney for getting Taylor Hall for what he did from Buffalo, with Hall forcing his way here, and then bum him out for getting what he did for Brad Marchand when that was Marchand's choice of destination.
Yeah.
You can't have it both ways.
He did right by the player.
Yeah.
And he still got a decent return because we also don't know what's going on medically with Marchand, and it sounds like there's a possibility we may get at worst, you get a free second-round pick.
Look, people are calling it a conditional second-round pick. It is not a conditional second-round pick. It is a conditional first-round pick. The second-round pick is guaranteed. If Florida wins 2 rounds in the playoffs and he plays 50% of the games, then it becomes a first.
Yeah.
The first is conditional, not the second.
Yeah.
The second is guaranteed.
Yep. I've been wanting to correct people on that one too. It just, the wording of it. Anyway, let's go through them. We will pull them up here. So the first one he pulled off was with Edmonton. He sent Trent Frederick and Max Jones to Edmonton. It was a 3-team deal involving New Jersey, but long and the short of it, you sent out those 2 players and you got back Max Wayner, a defensive prospect, a 2026 4th-round pick, and a 2025 2nd-round pick that was originally St. Louis's. An injured Trent Frederick and an AHL Max Jones. I mean, you freed up a contract slot by throwing Max Jones as part of this deal. He wasn't doing a lot for you overall. I mean, this by itself was a banger of a deal, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, you got a 2nd-round pick for a guy that you weren't going to re-sign. You dumped the Max Jones contract. You got a prospect in Wanner that is intriguing, if nothing else. And you flipped the 4th-round pick for Yokiharu later on in the day.
Yeah.
I don't know how he could have done better.
Especially for the fact that Trent Frederick was injured. And
yeah, no one was giving you a first.
No, not at all.
Wasn't going to happen.
I know I've seen some people complain about the retention, but he's a free agent at the end of the year. The retention means jack diddly shit.
Yeah.
Absolutely not anything. Now the retention that comes through later, we'll talk about those, but after that, he dealt with Minnesota. I was surprised he made a deal with Billy Guerin.
So was I.
But setting out Justin Brazeau, I don't care who I dealt with. I'm glad that we got rid of him because we know he wasn't coming back. You get your own 2026 6th-rounder back, get Jacob Lauko back, and you get Marat Kuznetsov. I'm going to butcher that every time.
My understanding, the K is silent.
Okay.
So it's who's Newtonov.
Okay. Now he's intriguing.
Yeah. Here's a guy who did well in the KHL. Was played heavily in defensive situations with the Wild. He plays with pace, has a lot of speed on the smaller side, but he doesn't really play small.
No, not at all.
Is a very good playmaker. He's not going to drive a line, but put him with the right teammates. He could be a solid 3rd liner that can put up some points for you.
Yeah, and I'll be very interested to see what can develop between him and Georgi Merkulov, assuming Merkulov gets another call back up, which I think he will. We'll talk about him a little bit more. It doesn't hurt to bring another Russian in if you're trying to convince Merkulov to maybe not go back to Russia next year when his contract is over.
Yeah.
So,
And not only that, they got all that for Justin Brazeau,
Exactly.
a guy you were not bringing back. That I wouldn't want them to bring back. And, we've had our knocks on Brazeau, but that's the return for Justin Brazeau. To say he didn't nail that out of the park, I mean, we got to come up with a nickname for him. We'll call him Koozie.
That's what he's going by, I think. So, yeah.
Okay, I would have taken Koozie straight up for Brazeau at this point. The fact that you got a draft pick, even though it's a 6th rounder, and Jakub back with him is icing on a cake.
I mean, with how we've talked about Justin Brazeau, honestly, I would have taken each individual piece by itself for Justin Brazeau. So the fact that you got all 3 of them together, I mean, this is a grand slam.
Oh, definitely great. The 6th round pick may never amount to anything. We all know what we're getting in Lauko.
It's a dart at the dartboard, though. That's all the 6th round pick is. I mean, you need all the darts that you can get. And who knows? Maybe this is a 6th round pick that you package with a 5th rounder and you move up in the 4th to get a different Loke Johansson type player. Like, it doesn't hurt to have it.
Anybody who does not like this trade is not a hockey fan.
They're just a Justin Brazeau fan. And Jakub Lauko, big for the locker room. I think once this deal came through, that was kind of when I pivoted from, I think they are really considering to dealing Brad Marchand to they're actually going to pull the trigger on something. As soon as I saw Lauko come back, I knew there was a lot more coming, and at least 1 or 2 other major things were going to happen. And of course, the first one dropped the next day, Charlie Coyle and a 2026 5th round pick, our own, shipped to Colorado. We get William Zellers, a 2025 2nd round pick, and Casey Middlestead. Another home run deal.
Yeah. Even if Middlestead doesn't pan out, this is still a win. I'm really high on this Zellers kid. Playing with the Green Bay Gamblers of the USHL, just an offensive weapon.
And we weren't going to get Callum Ritchie straight up for like that. Just was he was not going to be in this deal.
No. I think Colorado had to include him because of the extra year still left on Coyle's contract. If Coyle was a UFA, Zellers wouldn't have been coming back in this deal. Does he have some warts? Yeah, he's got to work on his game on the other side of the puck. He's got to get a little bit stronger. But, he's going to North Dakota. He'll probably spend 2 to 3 years there. I don't see him playing the full entire 4 years at UND, where he's in a program which is going to help him with his defensive side of the game. But the offense, I mean, I know we have a question from Dave from Niagara coming up a little later about what does all this do for the Bruins prospect?
Yeah, we got a couple other folks already asking in the chat. And I do see all these comments. I'm not ignoring them. I want us to get through the trades first, and then we can cycle through them.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll get to that when we get to that. But Zellers is, in my view, right up there with Fabian Lysell, maybe even a tad bit higher than Lysell in terms of offense.
Yeah. And I think part of why you got the return that you did is because Colorado was anxious and wanting to get rid of the Middlestead contract because he wasn't fitting correctly for them. So you got someone who can help you in Middlestad today. You got someone who can help you in the future in Zellers, and you got the pick. So, and I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about it, but I think this one went to a bigger issue. They all went to a bigger issue that we'll talk about a little later on. But I mean, Middlestad will help. Like, I just love this deal overall. Sad to see Charlie Coyle go, obviously, but what you got in return, not going to complain about. And as you mentioned it, that 2026 fourth rounder that we got in the Edmonton deal, we flipped for Henry Jokiharju, who I think has been very underutilized in Buffalo. And I think he's going to surprise a lot of people.
I think so. Look, Don Sweeney does not acquire players that he doesn't feel he can't re-sign or doesn't want to re-sign.
Yeah.
That's his motto. And there's obviously something that they see in Jokiharju's analytics. And by analytics, it doesn't mean what you and I and the average fan have access to. NHL teams have their own analytics that goes far beyond anything we're capable of finding on the internet. So there is something that they see in that they really, really like. Look, Jokiharju was, in my opinion, very good at the Four Nations.
Oh, yeah. I think he went very under the radar there.
Yeah. So there is something there. And they needed somebody to replace Brandon Carlo moving forward. Yeah. Is he the answer? I don't know. Only time will tell.
Well, and it's funny, too, because everything seems like it was so backlogged at the league office that nothing was processed until at the very end when things all started coming out together. So, this, if we had seen this deal come through at, 10 o'clock in the morning, I think most people would have looked at that and said either Andrew Peeke, Parker Wotherspoon, or Brandon Carlo is out the door.
Yeah.
But, of course, the way everything fell through, this looks like it was a, obviously Sweeney knew he was moving on from Carlo as well, but it just, the way everything seemed to backlog, I just think that's kind of funny. And, we were finding out the full Marchand return 2 hours later. So after the Jokiharju deal, though, Mark McLaughlin gets dealt to New Jersey for Danil Misul, a defensive prospect. AHL for AHL swap, but not a bad one for Boston. You needed to bring in more defense. What have you got on Misul that is a probably a hidden thought, maybe?
I don't know. I think this was just a trade of AHL players who needed a change of scenery. Look, McLaughlin wasn't coming back. He's a Group 6 unrestricted free agent. So, they got an asset back to see if there's something there. At this point, it's probably a trade of career AHLers.
And if that's all it is, that's fine. You needed defense in your system anyway. You were already running a little low there. So to just have someone else come in and provide that the additional internal competition in that roster spot, I'm okay with that too. Like you said, Mark McLaughlin wasn't going anywhere in Boston. Not because of anything against him. Just he wasn't going to break through here. So,
no, he wasn't. So, it was time to move on.
And the big one started to come in. Brandon Carlo shipped to Toronto. Pittsburgh was involved in the deal as well because Toronto had to dump some money. You get the 2026 first round pick, which is top 5 protected. Do you see Toronto dropping into the top 5 in the draft in the next 2 years? Exactly. No. As long as they have Brandon Carlo, they're going to be out of the top 5. With that forward group. Then you get the 2025 fourth round pick, which was originally from Philly, and you get Fraser Minton, one of the top prospects in their system.
Okay. That morning, bright and early, those of you that follow me on HF boards, was actually the night before, or the Frederick trade, when I said, don't count out something happening that night after the game, and it did. Friday morning, bright and early, I said on HF boards, the Bruins are getting a lot of calls still this morning on Brandon Carlo, and they held out for the highest bidder as late as possible, and Toronto came calling. The pick obviously is a bonus, a big bonus.
Which pick? The fourth rounder?
No,
you got the fourth rounder because you retained money in the deal. That's what it
right.
is.
That's the same thing they got from Edmonton for retaining on Frederick.
Exactly.
The first round pick in what is an excellent draft next year is the key thing, but don't sleep on Fraser Mitten.
No.
Now, I've had several people ask me since the trade, wouldn't you have rather Easton Cowan instead of Fraser Mitten? Well, here's my response to that. Excuse me. First of all, you weren't going to get him, not with a first round pick. Second of all, the minute the Leafs drafted Easton Cowan, my opinion was, and I said it publicly, was Easton Cowan is not a first round pick. I still don't believe he is. Yeah, he's done some great things in the Ontario Hockey League. Set a record for the longest point streak. If depending on which Leaf reporter you talk to or people that cover the team, they would flip-flop on whether Mitten was their number one prospect or Cowan was their number one prospect.
Yeah, I mean, they were both solid prospects to begin with, though.
Yeah. I'm overwhelmed with happiness at the return from this trade. I really am. I really thought they could have got a first. They retained, got a fourth with it. But to get back one of their top prospects was just something I didn't see happening.
Yeah, and from my understanding, Dom, you may know this a little more detailed, but wasn't he line mates with one Matthew Poitras at juniors for Team Canada?
Yes.
Think that had anything to do with, even if
no.
If they were given the choice between the two, you don't think that would have played any part of it?
No, I firmly believe if they were given a choice that they would have taken Mitten. Look, Mitten projects as a low-end second liner, a very high-end third liner. We'll have to see how his development goes now that he's under Boston control. But that's what I see him as now. Cowan maybe has a little more offensive upside. Maybe. I stress maybe. But Mitten's all-around game is better suited for the NHL than Easton Cowan's game.
Now, do you see Fraser Mitten sticking as a center, as a winger? Where do you think he fits better with Boston long-term?
I think as a winger.
That's what I was thinking too. But you need help on the wing too. So I'm not complaining. If you look at every single one of the forwards that they brought in, they have the capability to play down the middle or on a wing. You continue with the versatility that Don Sweeney likes. Real quick, before we jump into all the comments and stuff, we obviously have the very last one. Brad Marchand sent to Florida for, as we talked about, the 2027 conditional first-round pick that turns – it's a second-round pick, converts to a first if – and it's a 2027 first or 2028 first-round pick if Florida wins 2 rounds of the Cup playoffs this year and Marchand appears in at least 50% of the playoff games.
So, yeah, that Florida first-round pick, there's conditions to another trade that they made. Who was it for now?
I will try and dig that up, as I don't remember off the top of my head.
So it depends on what happens with the first-round pick in that trade as to which one the Bruins would get should Florida and Marchand meet the criteria for that. Now,
it was the Seth Jones trade.
No, yeah, the Jones trade.
That was their 2026 first rounder. Because that one's not even conditional. I feel like there is a condition for it though.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. So anyway, look, like we said earlier, this is what Brad Marchand probably wanted, and the Bruins made it happen. Do we hate the return? Probably. But for a guy that may not play for Florida this year, he wasn't going to be doing anything for Boston this year either then. So getting a second-round pick for him is very good.
Yeah. I know the return is underwhelming, but that screams one of two things. Like you said, one, Brad wanted to go there. And 2, the injury, we have no idea really what's going on with it. And so they looked at, I mean, it sounds like this one, the Carlo deal, a couple of them really came down to the wire. And, I mean, would you have liked to have seen him try to pinch a little more out of this deal? You'd like to see it. But at the same time, you know, Marchand's going to have a better taste in his mouth as he leaves, going to somewhere he wanted to go. And it's still not a bad return for someone who might not actually play.
Yeah.
You know, so, if he doesn't do anything for them, you know, I know a lot of people are getting upset about how we got to the point of trading Brad Marchand, but the fact of the matter is they came to a conclusion they were going to deal him, and so they got what they could for him and still treated him right on the way out.
You're going too fast. Stop at how we got to this, and now play Elliot Friedman's comments from last night.
Let me get those pulled up real quick here. Sorry, I had the trades lined up here. I got to do it in a different way here because audio doesn't like to transfer over sometimes. There we go. This way here we'll have audio.
Yeah, it's not good without the audio.
Just a few more things I wanted to go over from the Marchand situation. Number one, I think the Bruins and the player had agreed on term, 3 years. But as Don Sweeney said yesterday, there was a gap, and there was a gap on AAV. And I don't think he was being asked to take a pay cut or anything like that, but I do think it was a sizable gap that they obviously could not bridge. Where I think this really went sideways was there was a point this week where Brad Marchand, who is currently injured and not in the lineup, asked for a face-to-face meeting with Bruins management. I don't know exactly when it was. I don't know exactly who was there, but it did happen. And in that meeting, Brad Marchand asked for a compromise. He said, I will compromise. I will bend on some of my ask. I'm asking the Bruins to bend on some of their stance, and we'll find a way to get this deal done, because he wanted to stay as a Bruin. And it just didn't happen. The Bruins had gone as far as they were willing to go. And look, anybody out here watching hockey in the hockey world has watched Brad Marchand play. We know he's going to the Hall of Fame for one major reason. He's got an incredible amount of pride, and he puts everything on the line. I think he was really stung by that. And then all of a sudden, the Bruins started to look, okay, we're not going to go any farther. We're going to start looking out there. And I think one of the things that really happened in the last 24 to 48 hours before the deadline was that Marchand's agent, I was told by several teams, Wade Arnott, made it very clear that Marchand had a place he wanted to go. And obviously that was Florida. And in the last minutes, the Bruins acquiesced and made the deal. But so that's everything I understand there. And I think it really hurt Marchand that the face-to-face meeting couldn't get a deal.
So for several weeks now, I've been saying that the Bruins had offered 2 years and Marchand wanted 4. Even Don Sweeney came out in his press conference and said there was a gap in term, but they appeared to close that gap and they settled in the middle at 3. Whether that was after Marchand had sat down with them and had the face-to-face or before, who knows? We'll probably never, ever know. But that gap closed. I think what happened is, like Friedman said, Florida is the place he wanted to go. The Bruins tried right to the end to try and get the deal done with Brad. It couldn't get done. And at the last minute, filed the trade with the league and pulled the trigger.
Yeah. It's and when you're talking about dollar amounts, I know some people are saying, because Friedman's talking about him not taking a pay cut. Does that mean from his current rate or from what they were discussing initially? No one's going to know. But if you're talking about a 2-year term versus a 4-year term, and you're talking about a couple dollar amount difference in the millions of dollars, it adds up to a big difference. So when you're talking about overall dollars, there's a big difference there. And I mean, what would you have given Brad Marchand a contract for 3 years?
I don't know. I don't want to get into that.
Exactly. They just weren't there on dollar amount. It is what it is. And so, like you said, last minute, Sweeney pulled the trigger on a deal that he had that allowed him to go somewhere where he wanted to go. Does it suck because he's been here for 16 years and we love Brad Marchand as a Boston Bruin? Yeah. But again, if Don Sweeney got absolutely nothing for Brad Marchand and Brad Marchand doesn't come back next year, then we're crucifying him for getting nothing. So, let's see. I know you just pulled this one up. Not sure if you touched on this already, but have we seen the last of Matt Poitras? Doesn't feel like there's any real fit for him on the NHL squad anymore. Traded in summer, ? Do you want to address this, or do we want to go through all the comments that we've been getting and come back to
it? They're not trading Matt Poitras. The Bruins see exactly what I see. He's been bogged down by playing with no talent wingers. Look, 3 weeks ago when he was playing with David Pastrnak and made those great setups to Pastrnak for goals, everybody was saying they need to play Poitras with Pastrnak more. Those two have chemistry. There's a connection. Then when he gets sent to play with Justin Brazeau, who hasn't scored a goal since I was born, and Trent Frederick, who hasn't scored a goal since Chris was born, and we're expecting him as a playmaker, because Matt Poitras is not a goal scorer, he's a playmaker. We're expecting him to set up these two who couldn't hit the outside of a barn 3 feet in front of them.
Right now they couldn't hit the ocean falling out of a boat.
We're getting on his case and saying he's trade bait?
No, I don't think so. It also doesn't make sense to deal him because he's been one of the bright spots that you've had. Right now, what you're looking at is a roster where he was only sent down, as we talked about, so that he could qualify for the Calder Cup playoffs. And two, right now, you're still trying to get this group of new players to mesh in the locker room with your new leaders that you now have. You just blew up your entire leadership core. Coyle wears an A, or wore an A. Carlo wore an A. Marchand wore the C.
Before you go on, back to Patra. I've been asked many times, even in here in the chat, what does that do to our prospect pool? If you still consider Matthew Patra a prospect, Matthew Patra, despite all the additions that they made, is the Bruins' #1 prospect. Ahead of Fabian Lysell, ahead of Georgi Merkulov, ahead of Dean Letourneau, ahead of Fraser Mitten, ahead of Will Zellers. Matthew Patra is the team's #1 prospect. If you still consider him a prospect.
I was going to say, I just don't consider him a prospect anymore. Like, does he still have things that he can learn by not playing in the NHL? Yeah, he does, but he has a lot more he can learn by being in the NHL, and that's where he ultimately will end up being. But again, right now, your leadership core was just blown up. So you've got to get Casey Middlestad settled. You've got to get Lauko resettled. You've got to get Kuzi settled in. Like, does Matthew Patra help in that process? Maybe a little bit, but this is where you need Pastrnak to step up. This is where, even though he's hurt, McAvoy needs to step up and really, I think your next captain is David Pastrnak right now.
Without seeing what they do in the summertime, I don't know.
Again, right as of right now, I know they're not going to address a C at the moment, but at this point now you've got to figure out who's going to wear the other A's. So, yes, Patra will be back up. Just doesn't have to happen right away. They had a game the day after the deadline, and they were a little bit more worried about getting the guys in on the roster to the game and playing that game. So now they can go through and figure out, and then they beat Tampa Bay. Who the fuck saw that coming?
And Patra was in Tampa with the team.
Right. So he's coming back up. It's just a matter of doing it the right way for the roster movement. And it's not about money. You have plenty of money, 6.8 in cap space. So you'll be able to call up all 4 guys that you want to call up. But you just got to figure out, make sure that you get the right 4 for the new group that you have. So let's see. I'm gonna go back and get to all the comments that we were waiting to have come in. So, did you have any other thoughts to add before I dive into those?
No. Start diving.
All right. I think we already saw this one. Sweeney's trade deadline as an A-. I think we addressed that one. Steve was asking, do you think 63 could re-sign with the Bruins next season?
I never say never. I don't know that the bridge has been burned beyond repair. But I never say never.
Yeah, even Sweeney said that the door is not closed. We just know Marchand's going to have to come down to the Bruins number. Marchand knows where the Bruins are at. And also, if he comes back and goes through 3 rounds of playoffs, 4 rounds of playoffs, who knows where his body's going to be at? Dude might just retire. He's a little banged up. So
yeah,
we'll have to see. It's possible, but it doesn't happen all that often either. Bear Force says the only deal I wanted more in was Marchand, but he pretty much asked to go there. All the other deals Sweeney got great returns. Really like the Yoki Haru addition. Again, Yoki Haru, someone else mentioned it further down. Very underrated player in the NHL overall. performed very well at Four Nations, and you know that that's someone that he saw at Four Nations and said, if I end up moving Carlo, I'm going to target him. So let's see. Jason says everyone seems pretty excited about the kid in the Coyle deal. I'm not sure if he's referring to Zellers or Middlestead, but excited about both of them, honestly. I think Middlestead was getting misused in Colorado, and we'll have to see how he fits in here, but a refreshed opportunity, never a bad thing for him. Thoughts on
he had a very good playoff for Colorado last year.
And he had a very good first game against Tampa. So
yeah.
Let's see. Leonardo says, time to move on from the old core. They needed to rip the Band-Aid instead of lingering in the past. Well, he certainly ripped. That's for sure. A couple other questions. Let's see.
I don't think this retool is going to take as long as people think it is. Depending. I mean, if I look at next year, they've got about $26.5 million. And really, your biggest unrestricted free agents to sign are Morgan Geekie and Mason Leroy. Both arbitration eligible. So you got some money to fill in some holes. If they do it properly, this could be a quick turnaround. It could be a Washington-like turnaround.
It very well could be, yeah. Pogbot says if that pick becomes a first, the Panthers could look a lot different in 2027. Haven't seen any reports of it being top 10 protected. I haven't seen any protections on the pick. And 2027, by that point, I mean, who knows what's going to happen with Florida? I mean, I would still project it to probably be a mid-tier pick, somewhere between 15 and 25, just based off of who they have under contract through then. But yeah, by that point, Bobrovsky will be 38 going on 39. Kachuk will be pushing 30. Barkov will be 32, pushing 33. All their core guys right now will be on the wrong side of 30. So we'll see. Let's see. Bearforce says, really like this Zellers kid. He's lighting up the USHL. Absolutely. Gordov says, I didn't expect Sweeney to go as far as he did. Feels a bit like 2015. Difference this year is the 3 to 4 players besides the draft picks. This time, all the trades by Sweeney were a home run. Yeah. Let's see.
The only difference between this and 2015 is 2015 happened at the draft, and this was in season.
Yeah, and we look back at 2015 and go, whoops, when it comes to some of the draft picks. But we've had that conversation, totally different scouting department, and they're doing a lot better scouting now than they did in 2015. So
not only that, now they know where they're going to be picking, and they've got 3 months to do their homework.
Right. I know a lot of people aren't confident in Don Sweeney in drafting, but if you look at their last handful of drafts, they've been really good. And they've been targeted, and the development of those players, we talk about it on our show on Mondays, has been really good. So they're getting a lot of kicks at the can. Some of them are going to turn out great. Some of them aren't going to turn out so great, but that's why you get as many kicks as you do. And that's what he's done here. Let's see. Leonardo says Sweeney set them up really nice this offseason. They have cap space, draft picks, and they got some additions in the pipeline. Lots of options. That internal competition is going to be back.
Yeah.
Let's see. Does Zellers become our top prospect now, or would it be Minton or Lysell? Let's take Matthew Poitras out of it. Who do you hold as our number one prospect without Matthew Poitras being considered?
If I'm putting a heavier emphasis on potential than anything else, then number one is Dean Letourneau. Number 2 is Fabian Lysell. And number 3 is Minton. However, I don't put as much emphasis on potential as a lot of other people do, because I want to see the progression.
Yeah.
So if I put less emphasis on the potential, then it would be Minton, Zellers, Lysell.
Yeah, and I know someone had asked whether or not this means they could move on from Lysell or not. I think you keep him. He is still one of your top prospects. So, as Matrix points out, Bruins went from the 6th youngest team in the league to the 2nd youngest team. Let's see. Watched the Leafs-Avs game last night. Quickest I've seen Carlo move all season. Mike saying we should all hit the like button. Love that one. I would love it if we could get some likes in here. Thank you, Mike. And it's not us asking for it. So I very much appreciate that, Mike. Really helps with the algorithm in the comments too. And I don't want anybody to feel ignored. That's why I'm trying to get through and get us caught up before I get to the more recent ones. Kevin, got to give you credit saying that he's been banging that drum to trade Marchand for 2 months. His only criticism is that he didn't trade him sooner. Would have gotten a guaranteed first rounder. I don't think you deal Marchand until the last minute, though. It's just not a move that you make 2 weeks ago or a week ago. What do you think?
You were still in the playoff race. You don't trade him when you're in a playoff race.
Let's see. Is Minton basically Shane Pinto?
I'll leave that up to you. I don't do player comparisons.
I mean, in what sense? It would be my question. I don't think you can really compare the two in a lot of ways, but I know a lot of people think Pinto can be that fringe 3 to 2C kind of player, and you know, like you said, that's kind of where Minton projects. So in that way, sure, I guess. With college games ending, will most college free agents want to sign in Boston? They're going to have some roster spots to offer. So
yeah, the thing now is they know everybody sees there's an opportunity in Boston, so why not? If they could grab TJ Hughes, and this is going to be a long shot, TJ Hughes immediately jumps into, I will say, one of their top 5 prospects. Immediately. Gleb Veremiev, there's another one. I wouldn't say he jumps as high. He might be the second best fish available after TJ Hughes. And he's been to Bruins camp. He knows the Bruins are interested. They've seen a lot of him while keeping tabs on Ty Gallagher at Colorado College, their teammates. So, you know, if you have to sign Gallagher to help lure him, you do it.
Yeah, well, and Gallagher's not a slouch prospect himself at this point, so I would definitely take them both. J. Crow says, I feel like Quatro's play is stalled. That said, is it on him or on the situation they're putting him in? Curious as to what you guys think they will do with him for the remainder of the season. I think we addressed that a little bit. You're going to see him called back up. And did he stall a little bit? Like, yes, because of who he was playing with. So
yeah, we already touched on that.
Let's see. Good question here from him, though. Is Koepke back? I know he kind of went ghost after the first month or so of the season up until the last game, but I still see a guy with speed, a shot, and pretty consistent strength on the puck, but he's pretty consistent. Thoughts on Koepke?
Yeah, he played a pretty good game against Tampa yesterday. What you have to decide, because that fourth line started out so hot at the beginning of the season, is why did it all dry up? Was it because of Kosteluk and Kosteluk's injury when he got his? Was it the play of Kepke, or was it the play of Beecher? Make that decision, and then you know which ones to bring back.
Yeah, and was it just the overall tenor of what was going on in some respects? That there's a comment, there's a question that I have too that I want to bring up, but I want to get through these. I like DM's question here. Do the Bruins make the playoffs this year with this team? They're not eliminated yet mathematically, so
why would you want them to?
I'm not saying I want them to. I'm just saying it would be, based on how this year has gone, the most Bruins thing ever to squeak into that wild card 2 spot.
Yeah, I'd rather they kept losing and got into a top 7 draft.
I know.
Pick.
I want the top pick too. I want them to just. I just want to see them continue to develop. Honestly, that's what I'm focused on. Steve says, "Who's going to coach these boys next year?"
Yeah, that goes with David's question.
This one here is the Bruins' next move, a decision on coach.
I don't know that it's the next move, but it's a move that has to be made. What I would do in the whole coaching scheme of things, from bottom to top in the organization, I would keep the skills and developmental guys. I would keep the skating coaches. I would keep Ryan Mougenel in Providence. I would do my darndest to replace Trent Woodfield as an assistant coach in Providence. Obviously, I would keep Bob Essenza and Mike Dunham as the goaltending coaches. Yep. And in Boston, I would do a total revamp. Top to bottom.
Yeah, and a lot of that's going to be dependent on who's available too, as we've had that conversation. Those are like, if nothing changes across the league, if nobody gets fired, I know that's probably not going to happen, but if nobody gets fired, then who are you looking to bring in? That's my question. So see who becomes available, and
there are guys ready to make the jump. Ideally, this is the second youngest team in the NHL right now. Ideally, you want somebody who can coach and communicate with young players and help develop them. Because let's face it, for the next couple of years, the days of developing in Providence and coming up to Boston are done. You're developing in Boston.
Yeah. Let's see. Leonardo asks, any chance they try to move up in the draft if they are not picking top 5 to try to get that 1C? I mean,
there's always a chance.
Yeah, and
always a chance.
Before asking about where they're going to draft, we got to see what the lottery looks like too. They could have a 2% chance at the first overall pick, but they still could end up with it. So, it's you got to see what the cards come up as before you know where you're picking. And like you said, the worse they do now going forward, the more those odds increase to get it, so that they don't have to make a move and can still get one of those 4 centers that are available, or maybe have that number 1 overall pick. So let's see here. Yeah, Kevin says that there are 4 centers that could go in the top 8 that could be considered number 1, with 2 of them being franchise guys, which we'll talk a lot more about the draft as we go.
Yeah, like, the kid from Sweden, Frondell, is probably the most NHL ready. Higgins was overwhelmingly considered the number one pick coming into the season. Let's forget that. None of these centers are going number one. It's Matthew Schaefer, even though he's only played like 10 games this season.
Yeah.
He's going number one. He is the consensus number one. Michael Misa has shown all season long why he should be the first center off the board after Higgins got off to a real slow start. Frondell, like I said, playing against men, is the most ready to step into the NHL next season. So, you know, with Matthew Schaefer being the consensus number one, what it does is it knocks the centers down a peg. It knocks them down closer to a Boston pick. Now, that said, you said they have the chance of winning the lottery.
Not zero.
And if that were to happen, I would hope that they would trade down to number 2, gain an asset, let whoever pick Schaefer number 1, and then have your pick of the centerman.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, we'll have to see. I mean, or you could draft Schaefer and use him as the asset to deal away. You know, and then open it up to a team that really wants that defenseman. So let's see.
No, you're gonna get more by trading down.
Oh yeah. Let's see.
You're not going to get a number 1 center back in return for trading Matthew Schaefer for a guy that's only played 10 games in his draft year. It's just not going to happen.
Let's see. Eric asks, who should be Pasta's center? Is it Zaka short-term, Minton, or Lindholm long-term? Lots of...
Poitras long-term.
I think it's Poitras long-term. I mean, you could look...
Depending on who else comes in.
Yeah, depending on who else comes in and where some of these prospects look to fold in, you know. I think that's part of why you're not seeing a guy like Poitras called back up right away, thrown in the lineup. And he's probably still dealing with some soreness in that rib cage area from that hit he took against the Islanders. So I'm sure he's able to play, but, I mean, in meaningless games at this point, just let him rest. Let's see. David says, with all the trades and the moves completed, this is a very good question. What impact do you think it will have on David Pastrnak? Well, so far, he's really talked and embraced and acted like your next captain. You have literally handed him the keys to the car and said, it's yours now. He's got, 19 games to show that he can drive it responsibly before you try and consider somebody else?
I don't think it's going to negatively impact Pastrnak at all. I really don't.
One thing that I did notice in the game against Tampa, aside from the actual victory itself, the compete level was back. Did you notice that?
Yeah. Definitely.
Now, I'm not trying to create a narrative that there were problems in the locker room. It's just because they did compete. They competed their asses off. It's just, I think when you have a leadership core that you had, which emulated by Marchand, Carlo, Coyle, those were the leaders of this team. And
yeah,
I don't want to say it was a laid-back leadership style, but there was, how many times did we hear, we didn't have our A game today, we didn't come out ready, that's on us, we weren't ready to go, we didn't bring the energy enough, things like that under this leadership group, with those guys, the main guys going forward.
You know what? I think there's an easier explanation. Justin Brazeau did not play with pace.
Well, no, he didn't have any pace.
Charlie Coyle did not play with pace. Trent Frederick, for the vast majority of the season, did not play with pace. Brandon Carlo, I think we can all agree, did not play with pace. He's good in his own end, but did not play with pace. You look at Yogi Haru paired with Zadorov and look at the underlying numbers from the game in Tampa. Brought pace to the game. Casey Middlestat brought pace to the game. Kuzi brought pace to the game. Cole Koepke brought pace to the game. Jacob Lauko brought pace to the game. I think inserting all these guys that play with pace just brought everybody else up, including Pasternak.
Yeah. You blew up the core, and that sends a message too. So that shows other guys in the organization that they're not afraid to deal you away, if that also makes sense. So, a guy like Cole Koepke, for instance, still young, 26 years old, pending UFA. But like you said, he brought more pace to the game on Saturday than he has in a while. So there's a message that's sent to him that's picked up his game. A Johnny Beecher, same thing. So
Johnny Beecher hasn't played with pace a single game this season.
Right. I mean, he played
including Saturday.
No, I'm saying the message is sent to him. So now he's going to be sitting here wondering, okay, maybe they're not afraid to not extend me a qualifying offer in the summer.
Well, there, you just hit it on the head. Okay. Why can we complain about Trent Frederick in a contract year being as bad as he was, but we can't about John Beecher?
I think a lot of people look at it as RFA versus UFA.
Still, he's playing for a contract.
I agree.
It's a contract year. At this point, if I'm Don Sweeney, if I'm the general manager of the Boston Bruins, John Beecher is not getting a qualifying offer. That's me.
I don't know why he would. He's not earning one. Now, he's got, 19, 18 games to change things around a little bit. But, yeah, as Six String says, surprised he hasn't been benched. It hasn't been there for him this year. So, you like we talked about, though, you weren't going to get anything for him at the trade deadline. You weren't going to deal him away. He's just someone that, dime a dozen. Is he good on faceoffs? Yeah. If he walks in restricted free agency and someone else signs him, you're not losing sleep over losing him. So,
like somebody asked way back earlier, would you bring Cole Koepke back? I feel more confident about a fourth line of Jakub Lauko, Mark Kastelik, and Cole Koepke than I have about the fourth line at all for Boston this season.
Yeah. David says that Beecher's played his way out of the league. I don't know if I'd go that far, but he definitely needs to sit if he doesn't pick things up. For sure. And I think Lauko's going to get a qualifying offer. I don't think you brought him back for nothing. So
no, Sweeney doesn't go after guys unless he knows or he wants to re-sign them. And the funny thing is, remember who Lauko was traded for? Vinny Lettieri.
Now you have them both.
And a swap of draft picks.
And now you have them both.
I'd like to see those two. I'd like to see those two play together. But the Minnesota line was good yesterday.
Yeah.
So I want to give them another look.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were kind of wondering, especially with Matthew Poitras being with the team, like what are the lines going to look like? They just barely got everybody to the rink in time, so that's
Well, I think that's why they bought Matthew Poitras with them, in case one of them wasn't ready to go.
Yeah,
and all they had to do was just throw in a transaction and call them up.
Right. And it probably would have been able to be an emergency recall too. So, but it's one of those things where, when you're making that lineup and that you've got everybody there, you're just going with guys who are familiar with each other. So,
yeah.
But they looked good. I agree with you. I had no issues with what we saw yesterday. And I don't think Don Sweeney's done either. I really don't. There's going to be a lot more that comes to the draft. I think he's still looking at some of the guys that you have to see what you can do for them.
Yeah, the team as it consists now will not be the same next year, come September. Because automatically you're adding Charlie McAvoy and Hampus Lindholm back into the equation.
Yeah.
So the question is, when you got to extend Lori, they've got to decide, is Jokiharju the answer to fill the void left by Brandon Carlo? And if he is, their defense is set.
Yeah.
Right? All their questions are up front.
And what's funny is he looked damn good next to Zadorov.
Yeah. Like I said, look at the underlying numbers. I think the high danger scoring chances were 8-2 in favor of Boston when they were on the ice.
They were a damn good pair yesterday. So I want to see how that continues to develop. I don't want to say it's going to fix
we know Zadorov can skate. No, but Zadorov can skate. We know that. And he can carry the puck. We've seen it numerous of times. But somebody like Jokiharju back there who can cover up for him and allow him to go. With Lori, McAvoy, Lindholm, Zadorov can become that. You can have one on each pairing.
Yeah, and I really would not mind if our third pairing next season was Zadorov and Jokiharju, based on what I've seen so far. So, Bench Rates loves the Zadorov Jokiharju pair. I know it's just one game, but let's continue to see how that meshes.
Yeah.
Because Zadorov's contract, if he keeps playing the way that he was 2 months ago, that ain't gonna be a good one. But if he plays the way he did on Saturday, that's a damn good contract.
Actually, he's been very good the last few weeks since McAvoy.
Yeah, the last couple of weeks he's really stepped up. And Mason Lori too. I love the minutes that they're getting. And now you just got to see, can Parker Wotherspoon fit there in the future? What's Ian Mitchell gonna bring? Yeah, as Kevin says, but Don Sweeney sucks. So
yeah, on popsicles in the summer.
Probably some alcoholic beverage as well. Dom, can players still be put on waivers and be claimed by other teams after the trade deadline? I'll let you give the proper answer. If someone's claimed on waivers after the trade deadline in the playoffs, right?
They cannot play in the playoffs.
So
now, one question we got to get to, because it can be a little complicated for people to understand, is offer sheets. Somebody asked us to go into it in some sort of detail on the show tonight. So Chris has just put on the screen what the compensation is for signing a player to an offer sheet. So anything under 1.51 million, there's no compensation. 1.5 million to actually, can you read it, Chris? Because I can't see it on my screen.
1.51 million to 2.29 million is a third round pick. It has to be your own pick, by the way. These all have to be originally yours. 2.29 million to 4.58 million is the second round pick. 4.58 to 6.87 is a first and a third. 6.87
and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so on and so forth. Then you get to
just
a whole bunch of other
leave
ones.
it on the screen so people can see it.
Yeah.
So here's the catch. Here is how AAV is calculated. If you sign a player to a 5-year, $25 million contract, that is a $5 million AAV. So that works out to a first and a third round draft pick. If you sign a player to an 8-year, or sorry, 7, because 7 is the max you can go, 7-year, $35 million contract, it's still $5 million a year, right?
AAV against the cap.
Am I right, Chris?
AAV against the cap, yes.
Okay. So, but that's not how it's calculated for offer sheets. How it is calculated for offer sheets is the value of the contract divided by 5 years or less, whichever is less. So that 7-year, $35 million is now 35 million divided by 5. So the AAV for draft pick compensation is now $7 million.
Which brings the cost to a first, second, and a third.
So remember, you're dividing by 5 or less, depending on the years of the years 5, 6, and 7, you divide by 5. Anything less than 5 years, you divide by the number of years the deal is for.
Yeah. Kevin says they need to chill on that compensation. The league could benefit from the drama of offer sheets. I mean, I think we're going to start to see a lot more, especially after St. Louis did it to Edmonton, and the cap is going up. And you're seeing some of the teams take the stand that you are when it comes to their draft picks. Teams like Tampa Bay and Vegas and Florida. And they're the ones that have had the most success recently. So I think teams are going to view an offer sheet as a lot more of a guarantee in what you're getting. So I'm interested to see where it goes. Is Minton available for the Providence playoffs? Yes, because he was assigned to Providence when they brought him in.
Yeah.
So the work visa doesn't have anything to do with whether or not he can qualify. He just can't start playing until the work visa is all situated.
Yeah. So, like, on Friday, the Toronto Marlies were in Providence for a game. So, in the old days, when a player is traded like that, they just walk across the hall and dress for their new team. But because Minton needed a work visa, he wasn't allowed to play in Friday or Saturday's game. They needed to get a work visa before he could play for Providence. And when he was traded, he was already in the American Hockey League. He wasn't in the NHL. So he was in the AHL by 3 p.m. on Friday. So, yes, he is eligible for the playoffs.
Yeah, Providence just is going to be more stacked for that playoff run. Let's see. Just looking at by that, I mean, they could not move to another team. Let's see. Back in the 70s, players complained that there was compensation for signing a free agent. How is this any different now? It's just because it's restricted. What do you think, Dom? I'll let you.
Back in the 70s, players didn't hit unrestricted free agency until they were 30 or 31. Now they do it at 27. That's something the players fought hard for, and they got. If you're not going to protect how long a team holds a player's rights for after a draft, why have a draft at all? Make everybody free agents.
Right. You don't think the amount of money that everyone has would make the likelihood of offer sheets go down? No, because look at Edmonton last year. They gained cap space and they still couldn't hang on to their 2 restricted free agents. Just because you have more money in the system and a higher cap, players are going to continually ask for more money. So how much can you project out and how accurate are you? There's a reason why JJ Peterka was being talked about at the trade deadline significantly, because Buffalo has big money tied up into a lot of guys and has more to sign. So you can really hamstring them if you want to offer a big enough a compensation and are willing to give up the draft capital. Now, is it going to be everybody? No. But it's certainly going to be a tool that teams are going to look at in a lot different of a way than they have been in the past. So, yes, Lorai is certainly going to have interest if a deal isn't done by July 1st. He's going to receive his qualifying offer, which means any offer he gets from another team, you're going to be able to match it. That's the other thing with the offer sheet or with the restricted free agency. While you can still get the offer from another team, as the team who owns the contract, you have the first right of refusal. You can opt to match it.
And you can, there's ways that you can prevent another team from offer sheeting your players. I could go to Mason Lorai and say, Mason, I'm offering a 1-year, $1.5 million bridge contract. A week before he has to file for arbitration. And he says, screw it. His agent says, screw it. We're filing for arbitration. You've just prevented anybody from offering an offer sheet. You cannot offer sheet a player who has filed for arbitration.
Yep, that too. Let's see. Would you consider unrestricted free agents like Chychrun or Marner?
Absolutely. Why not?
Yeah. And there's going to be a few of them. I know Mikko Rantanen's off the table now, but it's a tool that you have. I don't, like I said, Don Sweeney's not done. This isn't at all. This is step 1 of the rebuild. So
I still wouldn't call it a rebuild. This is a retool.
Retool. All right. But it's still step 1. Whatever term you want to call it. Whether it's a rebuild, retool, I agree with you. It's more of a retool, but it's still step 1. You had to sell off the broken branches of the tree, basically. Let's see. Ian, I'm trying to find my cursor to bring his comment up here. Says, I'm happy for Marchand to get a chance to win at another cup. Well, and then he says, I wish Washington added Ryan Strome. I thought he would have been a better add to their team. He had to be available. That's the thing. So I'd love Ryan Strome to come in to Boston. Honestly, I think he could bring a lot, but Anaheim has to want to deal him. So
I don't want that guy any place in a Bruins uniform.
You don't? Why? Why do you say that? Or
I'd rather not get into it.
All right.
Look, the minute the Bruins drafted Dougie Hamilton, my words were he will never sign a second contract with the Boston Bruins. Every time Ryan Strome gets mentioned as a possibility to Boston, I say, I don't want that guy in a Bruins uniform. Look back at the two players' history and then you can put 2 and 2 together.
Fair enough. I'll take your word on that one.
Look at their history. See if you can figure it
out. I'll take a look. I'm just saying, for right now, before diving into it, I'll take a look at it. Depending on his injury, could Jelvik go pro next season?
I don't think so. Not now.
Not after the injury he's had. So don't leave us hanging. Listen, we get good stories from Dom, so I don't push him for the ones that he doesn't want to tell because sometimes he just can't say. So, but no, back to the unrestricted free agents. There's going to be a lot of them that are available. There's going to be some really solid ones too. It's going to be an interesting offseason. There's, like I said, there's so much more to come that right now, A+ on part 1. Let's see how he does with part 2. Moving forward, I think.
My God, Minnesota's getting destroyed.
Oh, are they?
In the NCAA. 1-0 to North Dakota. Or Notre Dame, sorry. But they're just being killed in shots on net. This is the rubber game of the match. They're tied 1-1, best of 3.
What's the shot count?
I don't know. I just turned it off.
Oh, I thought you had it in front of you. So,
no.
There's gonna be a lot to watch, and a lot of college players that are going to be thrown into the mix as well. So, I think they still have. I just had it in front of me. I think they still have the same number of roster spots. I think it's still 5 open, but I think they're going to go, 45 out of 50 standard contract slots. They don't have any retainment spots open at this point, but once, July 1st, 2 of them will drop off.
July 1st, all 3 of them.
No, Carlos is sticking around.
Oh, yeah, Carlos.
Yeah, Fredericks comes off the books. Marchand comes off the books. I'm not worried about the retainment. It's only $615,000 on Carlo. What really sucks is you're using one spot on $615,000. I think Don Sweeney may look at those other 2 in the summer and come back to the draft with other options. I mean, how many times did he say it? Planting seeds for later things that could happen at the draft.
Mm-hmm.
There's still more money that they may look to take off the books. Pavel Zacha was still sought after.
Yeah, but I don't think they want to move Zacha.
I don't think they want to, but I'm sure they'll listen. And if a good offer comes their way, they won't say no.
He's still young enough. Him and Geeky are still young enough that you hold on to those 2.
Yeah, the one that I'm really looking at is Elias Lindholm. See where his game goes over the next 19 games, because he seems like things aren't settled for him, and just because he has a no movement clause doesn't mean he won't be okay with you trying to move him. So I think that's a dark horse that you could see maybe attach an asset to, or depending on where. I'm not saying you're going to get an amazing return, but if you can free up 7.75 again, you don't shut that option off. So, do you think Frederick will be the difference maker in Edmonton?
Watching Max Jones flatten Rantanen sure makes me think Max Jones could be.
I know, right? Max Jones for Conn Smythe.
Where was that in Boston?
It was in Providence.
Well, he started in Boston.
I know.
Because that's what he can bring to the table. But yeah, I think, I don't know that it'll be the difference, but adding Jones and Frederick is certainly going to help them in the physicality department, which is what Edmonton was really, really lacking.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll see where Frederick fits in once he comes back healthy too. Mike says we're stuck with 28. Everybody was saying Chicago was stuck with Seth Jones, and they were able to move him, and they got a good return for him. a first, and Spencer Knight. So nothing's impossible, Mike. And teams will have some interest who will take on a large portion of that contract or that contract in full. Well, let me ask you this, Dom. Elias Lindholm, is he a lot more attractive as a player if he's a $5 million player than a $7.75 million player?
Certainly.
So if you ate $2.25 million, don't you think you'd have some teams that are interested maybe in taking him off your hands?
Yeah.
So obviously he's got the no movement clause. But if he's okay with moving it or waiving it, it's not impossible to think that 28 teams out there may consider trying to look at bringing him in. Is it going to be all 28? No. But a team that I keep looking at for that, Columbus. They can use that type of player in their system. And they just added Sean Monahan this year. So he may be willing to go there to reunite with Monahan. Again, not saying it's going to happen, but just something to keep an eye on. And look at his game, too, because if his game picks up over this back part of the season, then no, you're not necessarily going to look to move him. So it's just something to look at. That took a season of them rehabbing Seth Jones's reputation. After this year, he ain't moving as is. Well, he's not moving because Florida wants him. So if a team wanted him, based on how he was acting to blow his way out of Chicago, I don't know what part of his reputation he rehabbed in Chicago, because if anything, he came off as unprofessional. Lindholm, if he's willing to waive his no movement clause, isn't making a stink about it. So there's that. Problem with Elias Lindholm is not having top-tier wingers. Well, you just brought in a bunch of forwards that might be able to help him bring that up. 28 isn't that bad. He's a 60-point center that's good defensively and very good at faceoffs. I mean, even if you can get 50 points out of him, is the 7.75 going to haunt him? Yeah, there's always one contract on this team that people look at and highlight. It used to be Hampus Lindholm. People complain that Hampus Lindholm's making 6.5.
Your boy Christian Konstantinsky.
Hey!
For Dubuque, and Minnesota's down now 2-0 early.
Good for him. Now, I got to ask, though, was it one of those just touch of the pucks, lucky to be in the right spot kind of thing?
No, it was a big wrister from the half.
Oh, good. Good kid.
But is he 6'7"?
I was going to say, he's got a big 6'7" frame that he can put behind that wrist shot. So
6'7", 800
something
pounds.
like that. Dude's a fucking freight train. So let's see. Only a couple minutes left here.
Good for him.
But overall, let's see. Zadorov is the problem. He didn't look like a problem on Saturday.
Nope.
He's not moving.
I want to say, if I can, a selfish plug here, Chris.
Yeah, for sure.
Tomorrow morning, my weekly prospects update is coming up, followed by probably around 9:30. A little 1,600 words on the Bruins prospects that they acquired on trade deadline. A little bit more in depth there than what we gave here. So you can find that at Dom.Hockey.
Yep, just type it in like that.
And Chris and I will go into it tomorrow night on the Prospect Show. We'll have plenty of highlights again.
Oh yeah, we'll break down all the highlights of the Providence guys, the prospects, the non-pros. So, real quick, as Tor points out, exactly, people flipped out about Hampus last year, and this year we really miss him. Yep, I think people are going to really see what Carlo can bring to the table as well now that he's gone. Mike says Elias isn't a 60-point guy this year. I'm not talking about this year. And no, he's not a 50-point guy this year either. So, again, where he's at right now isn't where he will be in 6 weeks, where he will be in 6 months. So I'm saying watch where he goes from now till the end of the year. See where his game goes. If he's able to turn it around, no, he still might not hit the 50 or 60 point mark, but Pastrnak might not hit the 100-point mark either if he takes a nosedive in production. Does that mean he's not that quality of a player? No. You have to see what he can do with this group of guys. Now that you've just changed the entire set of who he's working with, you have to reevaluate. Get 40 points, 50 points, 60 points out of your head when it comes to evaluating him as a player. See how he fits in with the group. That's what I'm saying. And John points out Mike Riley's $1.33 million comes off the books finally at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Hey, it's an extra $1 million plus. I'll take it.
Yeah.
What did we say they're supposed to have next year? A couple people asking if they could take a run at Mitch Marner as an unrestricted free agent. Well, considering the fact that right now they're projected to have $28.8 million in cap space, I'd take a run at him. You know, it's just a matter of do you think he's going to fit with the group. But yeah, I mean, someone who can put up those kind of numbers, you absolutely take a look at him and see if he's available. I mean, how many times did we hear that so-and-so is going to come to Boston when they hit unrestricted free agency? I mean, Noah Hannafin was supposed to do it. Jack Eichel was supposed to do it. How many other people were supposed to do it? So, yeah, if they hit the market, you make. Yeah, I mean, if they hit the market, you make a run at them. But guess what? 31 other teams are going to make a run at Mitch Marner as well. So he won't be hurting for cash next year, though. That's for sure. Dom, you got any other thoughts that you want to get out there before we wrap up?
No. Join us tomorrow night, 6:30, for the Prospect Show. And that's it. Lose, bees, lose.
Thanks again to Ice Shaker. I don't have mine on me. I actually left it on the other side of the room. But check out iceshaker.com. We are in talks with them to hopefully keep our partnership going with them. So thanks to them. Check them out, iceshaker.com. And yeah,